Did you have any close calls yourself?
Yes, uh, but close doesn't count. There were a couple of times where you can tell by the sound of the bullets, how close it is. I spent a very, very long afternoon low crawling against two dug-in 51 caliber machine guns. The good news for me was when they dug them in, they couldn't depress the barrels below parallel to the ground, and so they were about 12, 18 inches above the ground. And so we just using a lot of gunships to suppress them and a lot of smoke grenades, and we just low crawled long enough to where we could hand grenade them out. Went in with 90 paratroopers, Vietnamese paratroopers, and I had 6 dead and 30 wounded in one afternoon. That was probably the longest, closest that I've done. Other times things go by and you hear it and you feel it, you sense it, you get down and so on, but that's kind of fleeting. But uh, my first night attack, I was blown off my feet by a mortar, and later that night was wounded by friendly artillery because they had 1-2 wasn't leveled quite right with the bubbles, and it landed inside our perimeter and knocked unconscious down in my foxhole, about 15, 20 minutes. Well, my Vietnamese RTO was with me then, and he knew I was still breathing, and so we talked about it later. My boss had been trying to get me on the radio, but I was unconscious. And then, but I came back around and so on, and I could, a lot of noise and so on. But I remember I picked up the handset again, and so I could hear his voice, and then I heard my name, and so I answered him, and he said, "Where you been?" And I said, "I've been right here." And he said, "I've been calling you." And I said, I told him I must have passed out, and I was a lucky man. Well, the good news is you don't realize it when it happens. And then after it does happen, you realize that, well, it must not be that bad, because I'm coherent again.